Hey garden friends, welcome to the greenhouse. It is a beautiful rainy day, and let me get you a little bit straighter. I think this is crooked. Could just be me. But anyways, I wanted to hop on here really quick. There's been a lot of brouhaha over the USDA hardiness zone map and how it changed. And some people are kind of worried about it for some reason. Now this happens. This is totally normal for them to adjust it every 30 years, actually every 10 years. And what they do is they go back 30 years as far as the averages for the low temperatures of wherever you are at. Now zoning, so many people, so many new gardeners that I have seen in garden forums, Facebook groups, whatever, they place way too much emphasis on zones, and I feel bad that that has been promoted by some YouTubers, some vloggers and bloggers who themselves are relatively new to the gardening world and what the zoning really means. Now, if you're growing annuals, for instance, it doesn't matter. Your zone, because you're growing your annual flowers like petunias, when you plant them out in your garden, you do it when it's safe in your area. I am a zone 8. Safe for me is not till after the third weekend of May. Typically, last year in June, we had a couple of 30-degree nights. So it can vary dramatically. But Zone 8 up in Oregon, we went to visit my brother and sister-in-law up in Westland, Oregon, and that's a Zone 8. Everything was out. Their last frost date is much sooner than mine, but they're the same zone. Their growing conditions are much different than mine, and they're a Zone 8, 8A. So Texas, we have friends in Dallas, Texas. They are a Zone 8, dramatically different growing conditions. Their last frost date, first frost date, totally different than mine. Their growing seasons, much longer than mine, but they are a Zone 8. And that's only because our average low temperatures can be the same. When we get them, how long we get them, totally different. So you kind of get the picture of what the hardiness zone is all about. It's about your lowest temperature and what perennial plants, whether vegetable or ornamental, will make it through those temperatures. Now here's the caveat for me. We can have some very strange springs. It's totally typical here, so I shouldn't call them strange, but they're strange for people who have regular ones. We can have a couple weeks of very mild temperatures, warmish nights where they're above 50 in May, early May. Don't be fooled. People get antsy and they put their tomatoes out, what have you, and then it never fails. By the third weekend in May, we will have a hard freeze and they will lose those plants. So why, after all the warm, do we get these freak cold? Who knows? It's just where we're at on the mountain. Even my cousin who lives in Zone 9 at the bottom of my mountain that I live on, she can't plant out till after the third weekend in May safely and know that her plants are going to make it because of those late freezes we get in this area. Another example, another friend lives down there, gardening friend, same area, 9A or B, I think it is. And 2 weeks ago, she had a hard freeze, lost all her tomatoes. I didn't. My tomatoes are still going. I just pulled out the ones that were not inside my DIY building, and even they were still going, but I knew they wouldn't produce anything because of our cold nights. But she had a freeze go through in her little valley and wiped out all of her warm weather plants. So that tells you it's where you're located, your growing conditions, and it can change from year to year. Last year we had tons of snow starting the first week of November. Here we are at November, mid-November. We haven't had any snow yet, and it's raining, and this is a very warm rainstorm. Love it. I'm not complaining whatsoever, but that just shows you from year to year how your conditions can change. Now, I don't know why many others place so much emphasis on the zone and why so many people have picked up on it, new gardeners. There's been a lot of new gardeners joining our happiness of gardening the last few years, and that is so great. But I'm sad to see that they kind of get led down the primrose path of relying too much on the garden zone for the information they are looking for. I have, in one Facebook group, I see a lot of them, hey, I've got my petunias and I want to plant them out. I'm zone 6A. When can I plant them? I don't know, because it's not dependent on the zone at all. It has to do with your last frost date. And the USDA zones do not tell you when your first and last frost date will be. Also, when you're going by zip codes, here's another example of how you really need to look at your local gardening conditions and not the zone. Our zip code is shared by the towns from here, where I live, all the way up to the ski resort. The ski resort, if you went by their average lows, are more like a zone 3. But if you went by the zip code, it would say it's a zone 8, and it is not. Far from it. In fact, tonight, I think they're supposed to get to 17 degrees. And in the winter, midwinter, it can be much, much lower. So that tells you right there how misleading sometimes the zone information can be, especially on the West Coast. I had another video, and this is kind of a remake of that, but and I was telling you about how on the West Coast we are influenced by the mountains, mountain ranges, which I live on one, and the proximity to the ocean, the coastal areas. That dramatically changes your growing conditions, even in the same zone. Like Seattle's the same as me, but their growing conditions are much, much different. The amount of snow they get is different. The amount of rain they get is different. The high temperatures in the summer is different. That all affects what will thrive in your garden. Now, I was watching Janie's video on zones, and she did the zone 8 zone, and I had submitted a video, and it was terrible. But another gardener, I think it was the first one she showed, was from up in Oregon. And she said one of the things that thrives for her in her zone 8A garden is Camellia javanica. I have tried several times, and I cannot get them to overwinter, but they're supposed to overwinter in my zone. It's just my growing conditions that don't agree with them. And I have accepted that. I enjoy them in my friend's garden, which are, just a few miles down the road. And that's it. I just know I can't do it. So rely more on your immediate garden area, because the microclimates can make a big, big change. I'm surrounded by tall conifers, evergreens, and they block a lot of sun during certain parts of the year. That affects what I can grow. If I lived near the ocean breezes would affect what I could grow. If I lived down in Arizona or even in Dallas, Texas, the heat range would affect what I could grow successfully. So when you're buying plants, I would highly recommend going to a very local garden center and finding out what they carry. Now, I say that with a little bit of hesitation, only because I don't have a very local garden center. The closest one is half an hour down the mountain, and it's a totally different zone. So they get stuff that is, thrives in their zone. The others, like the Home Depots and the Lowe's and what have you, they are also that far away or further from me and in a totally different zone. So I don't have like one right here that I can buy from that would focus on plants that are hardy right here in my garden. So take the hardiness USDA zone map with a huge grain of salt. And if you've been gardening for a year or two, your observations are more important as far as what weather you have than the USDA zone. Use the USDA zone for if trying perennials. There are many zone 8 perennials that will not overwinter for me. And I've even mentioned this several times. Roses, you think I should be able to grow any rose I want because zone 8 seems fairly mild. That's not the case. I have now do rely on own root roses because we can have early or late hard freezes. the late hard freezes affect the roses because they're putting out all this new growth because it's been warm, and a hard freeze will come and it'll zap them back. We have had hard early freezes, and that is, I will have had temperatures in the 80s all through September, the first week of October, and it'll drop to 10 degrees overnight. It'll kill all my roses to the ground. And I've lost many that have been grafted that way. But the ones that I buy on own root, they will come back from the root and they will come back true. And what I mean by true is they will come back the rose that I purchased. Say it's a Queen of Sweden or some other name, Plum Perfect or Love Song. If I get them own root, I don't have to worry about it being killed to the graft and then it coming back as Dr. Huey or whatever the graft stock is. So that's why I lean into, and I will pay more for own root roses. I'm very happy that David Austin Roses does also now carry their own, some own root roses. It's a limited selection, but for me it's worth it to focus on that. Now here and there, like last year, I bought some of the cheap roses at Lowe's, like $9. They were grafted, but a $9 expense is not that big of a loss. I wanted to try these roses. I thought, okay, for $9, plus they were dying on the rack, and I thought I couldn't lose. And I will give them a little extra protection around that root graft and then hope for the best. And I planted them in areas where they're like close to my house, so they have a little more protection that way. So that's just, I really wanted to clear up a lot of the confusion around the USDA zones and what not to, don't even worry about it. Like I said, that doesn't really affect how you've been gardening because that's going on the last, 10 years, 30 years of average temperatures. So if you've been gardening for the last 2 or 3 years, you already know what your conditions are. Go with it. That's fine. You've already learned what you need to do. And next year, this next season will be different than last. I'm hoping. I hope I don't get the snow I did last year or for as long as we did. But that's just the way it is in gardening. Well, I need to get my plastic up here in my greenhouse. Can you hear the rain? It's beautiful, isn't it? I've got a couple drips going on in here. I have a cover for my greenhouse, and we haven't had a chance to put it up, but this is the first really big rain I've gotten, and I'm seeing where my leaks are. Yeah, I didn't get to repair this greenhouse this summer. We had too much going on, but that's the way it is. Gardening is a journey. It isn't a destination. I will always be switching things out that I want to try maybe, or something's not performing well, or I just want to put it somewhere else. That's why I really do try to raise from seed a lot or the majority of my plants that I can. Because if I lose like a batch of echinaceas like I did last year, I had this mite that killed the flowers. They would get up, I just have a cone and no petals. And at first I thought it was that one disease, something, I can't remember it, I'll put it on the screen when I think of it. Yellow's aster. Aster's yellow, that's it. I thought it was that. I was going to have to destroy all the plants, and I did pull up a bunch of them and destroy them. And then I read up on the symptoms that I was facing was a mite. A mite had attacked them and was killing the flower buds or the petals, and I just needed to cut them off. But I'd already removed a bunch. I started them all from seed. I started them right in the garden. It was no great loss. What, $3 for a package of seeds? My time, which I enjoy doing that in the winter anyways. So anyways, that is why I lean into seed growing for many things, because I know a couple years down the road I want to change out that area, and that's because I have a small garden. That's just how I keep it fun, and I expand into areas. I sometimes want to make it easier on myself, so maybe I'll put in some perennials, and a lot of times I will get cuttings or root divisions from friends of a plant rather than going and paying a pretty penny for a plant, though I love plant shopping too. And I will. I mean, like I tried Nepeta for the first time 2 years ago, fell in love, and now I've been trying different varieties of Nepeta and finding out all about them, and they love it in my garden, and the gophers leaving them alone. So far they've left them alone. So if I can find something that they won't eat, I'm good to go. Now that there's bulb, like all my bulbs except for daffodils, like my alliums and my tulips. I have to put them in containers because the gophers love them. It's like their gopher dessert over winter. You will read, it's getting pretty heavy. You will read in air, and I have from reputable sources, which really bugged me, that gophers won't eat garlic and alliums and onions, and sorry, they love them. And I read it in another extension thing that's totally inaccurate, but this was a major publication that, well, I consider it major, and it said, oh yeah, they're gopher resistant. No, they're not. And I will tell you, I did a test. I tested planting garlic in a raised bed that was protected from the gophers, had a mesh on the bottom of the bed. And then right next to it in another bed, I had a bunch left over, so I planted that whole bed. They did great. Wonderful. All growth. Oh, the gophers are going to leave them alone. Maybe I'm going to get a win. Time to go and harvest. I'm pulling up all these delightful garlic garlic bulbs. And then I turned to do the other bed that wasn't protected. There was not one garlic. They had been decimated. And of course, when I dug up that area, there's a huge gopher tunnel under there. So that proved it to me that they really do love garlic, and that's where my alliums went. They also will eat my lilies. I had hundreds of Asiatic lilies. They ate them. I've even caught them chewing on the bottom of my iris rhizomes. So if they are hungry enough, they will eat many things, even things people say are repellent to them. Gophers love alliums? Indeed, they are not pest resistant. Word to the wise. Personal experience. Okay, friends, that's just my spiel I wanted to get out. It probably was too long. I'll probably cut it down. But I wanted to address this thing of USDA zones that people are really getting up in arms about and worried and panicking and questioning and confused about. And I hope I made this simple enough for everybody to get the point in short order. So thanks for coming along and visiting me in the greenhouse on this rainy day. And yeah, everything's going great in here. I'm loving everything. I'm loving my time here in my greenhouse, and I hope you do too. I'm going to do more videos in here coming up soon. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye.